private company is able to write checks out of taxpayer funds with no oversight? And then they're shocked it leads to a $10 million embezzlement? I'm not shocked. I have a little bit of common sense. You have a little bit of common sense. And welcome, everybody, to another amazing episode of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider, candidate for state treasurer, the go-to candidate for state treasurer, of course, the one that everybody wants to vote for. And today, you're joining me as we cover a important episode, important topic here right after Christmas, and that is we've got another fraud, another multi-million dollar theft of pension dollars in the state. We're going to talk about this specific one, why this keeps happening, and how stupid government is. But before we get into that, please hit the like, comment, share, subscribe button. As we dig into this story, I would appreciate that. As well, you can tell your friends, your family about it. That's super helpful. And guys, listen, we're only 3-4 days away from the fundraising deadline for the state treasurer's race. It's important to hit these deadlines. So last time when we had a deadline, I was talking about how we need to hit it. And somebody asked, why is it so important to these candidates to hit these deadlines? Well, what's so important is this deadline, this end of year deadline. It's a time where we're showing how much money we've brought in and your ability to continue to get support. I mean, let's call a spade, okay? Your ability to win an election is a lot of times graded upon how much money you can raise. I mean, we just saw a governor candidate, Savannah Maddox, who had to remove herself out of the race simply because while she was doing, in my opinion, pretty good with fundraising, she'd raised several hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it still wasn't enough for the governor's race. And funny enough, we send out fundraising texts and things like that, of course, because we have to, because we are grassroots fundraisers. I'm going to hit upon that in a second. However, there was a response to one of these texts I got one time where they said, why do you need money to run a race? You throw your name on a ballot, you run a couple ads, you do this, blah, blah, blah. It should be fine. You really don't need that much money. This is a person who has no idea how much things cost. Let me put this in perspective, okay? A mailer. Right? A mailer. Okay. And those are those 4x8 cards you get. And a good campaign is going to send 4 of those ish as well if they're trying to get out there and talk to people. So a mailer, right? And the reason why mailers are so important is, especially in Republican politics, is because you do have a fair amount of elderly voters in the Republican Party that they either watch the TV or they get pieces of mail, and that is literally how they vote. And also, too, you have a lot of people that's just how they vote. I mean, I've commented this on other podcasts. The fact that we vote based upon a piece of mail or a 30-second ad is a travesty to our political system, but yet here we are. So I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just going to try to work within it as best we can. But so just a mailer, one mailer statewide for a low-cost statewide mailer to a pretty limited list as best you can is going to cost you around $100,000. That's right, $100,000 to send a mailer to a more limited audience. That's a fair amount of money, and that's certainly very expensive. Now you put in TV ads, everything else. Campaigns get very expensive very quickly. So part of hitting the fundraising deadline goals is to say, hey, look, we are progressing as a campaign. We're on a good pace. People support us. And then that begot support and media coverage. For an example, as I'm saying this, everybody pretty much knows who Ryan Quarles and Kelly Craft and Daniel Cameron is. And maybe you've heard the name Eric Dieters tossed around a little bit. You've maybe heard Savannah Maddox. Some people have heard Mike Harmon. The ability to have that conversation, the reason why their names get tossed around more than some others, and some others that don't get tossed around right now a whole lot. Alan Keck, he may after this, and I'll tell you why in a second. Alan Keck, like people like Robbie Smith and David Cooper, their names aren't getting tossed around a whole lot. And the reason why is because generally speaking, right now, they have either A, low name ID, or B, low money, or C, both. And the belief is you can't really win without at least name ID and money, but ideally you're going to need both. And so it's kind of the same thing, is that when people see a good fundraising pace, it creates kind of some earned media, free media, of course, as well. People talk about it a little bit, but also it creates validity in your campaign. Your campaign has the ability to win, which means other people are going to support it. And this is a very important campaign. We'll go into that more next year as we see how this race, the treasurer's race and the governor's race, how it plays out as we get to the filing deadline, which is January 6th. That's going to be important stuff, and we'll take a look at that then. But for right now, what I need you guys to do is I need you to donate to this campaign so we can show a good, strong fundraising base there. A good, strong fundraising. And so you can do that by going to C4KY.com. C4KY.com. That's once again the letter C, the number 4, the letter K, the letter Y.com. All right, C4KY.com. Give there. Thank you guys so much for doing so. And Lynn, let's dig into what we have left for today. So we have this pension story. And I'm going to spend some time on this because I think it's incredibly important. I say again because we see time and time again that our pensions are being defrauded. And we see it so much because, well, frankly, we have a bunch of idiots running our government. I'm not kidding you. We have a bunch of idiots in our government that do things that make zero sense. And at the same time, they get into the positions they get their jobs, they get those things because they've donated enough money or what have you to the right people that put them in place and trade political favors for those kinds of things. That happens quite a bit. But let's look at what these idiots in government did, okay? So, Kentucky, this is from the Courier-Journal. That's going to be the article I'm referencing quite a bit. Article by Joe Sonka. Ex-Kentucky pension officer says he was fired after reporting possible theft of millions. So here's the deal. Okay, you got Steve Herbert. He was hired, right, in early 2020 to fill the position, okay, of chief investment officer. All right, chief investment officer. That's a pretty high-end position. So he was hired in May of 2020, okay? But then he was fired recently, just a few months ago. That's not a long time to be in that top position, especially considering what happened over those years. Because over the 2020, maybe recently they've seen some bath, but when he was fired there a few months ago, the market really hadn't hit any kind of negative go down yet. And so really the fund has performed pretty well over that time. So chief investment officer should be fine. And so he was with the Kentucky Public Pension Authority, okay, KPPA. Now, to understand what happens in this fraud, so he's calling the whistle. He is saying, to Stephen Herbert here is saying, hey, there's some problems afoot. I'm smelling something, and I don't like it. And so he starts talking to some people about it. And what is he smelling? Well, what he's seeing is, okay, so understand this. So the Kentucky Retirement Systems, KRS, right, that you go to. So if you're like a state employee and you're retiring or something like that, you go to KRS and they have benefits counselors that work with you on your benefits and whether or not you should or should not retire and how much you'll retire with and things like that. And so these offices and the Kentucky Public Pension Authority and all the pension offices other than teacher's pension is based out of one office park called Perimeter Park West. It's in Frankfort off of 127. And the reason why that's important to know is because Perimeter Park West, the property in the building, is owned by the Perimeter Park West Corporation, which is owned by the Kentucky Public Pension Authority. So the public pension has invested in purchasing their own, property, right? Their own property. And that's very smart to do. Okay. Very smart to do. Right. But they have invested in their own property and order to rent it from themselves. And then they got the mortgage and they pay it down. That's a very smart thing to do. However, the board of the pensions, rather than hiring a maintenance manager or anything like that and foraying into property management, the Perimeter Park West group, which once again is a group owned by the Kentucky Public Pension Authority, KPPA. So KPPA owns the Perimeter Park West, which is an agency, which is an entity to help it manage its Frankfurt offices, okay? To buy it, manage it. So they hire, so the Perimeter Park West group hires Crumball Properties to manage the property, okay? And it appears over the course of some years here, now Crumball is not currently their property manager. However, this public chief investment officer, Herbert, starts digging in, and what's he find? He finds that Crumball Properties has embezzled, according to him, over $10 million. Embezzled $10 million. How'd they do it? Well, this is where we start getting into all common sense that people like me and you have seem to leave the minds of these so-called experts and causes them to do dumb, stupid things. This is why this society, the whole expert mentality, well, they're the experts, we got to trust them, is breaking down because their common sense goes out the flipping window. It seems like the minute they're posed with any kind of issue. I'm going to tell you what happens with these experts, these political appointees, these people who have politicaled themselves to the top. They're smart enough to figure out politics, but apparently because they've never actually apparently owned or operated a business, they do some of the dumbest things in the world, and this is what they do, okay? So what this says is that Herbert discovers that Crumball Properties had full access to write checks from the Perimeter Park West account with no oversight. So, in other words, the pension system, your tax dollars, our tax dollars, go into this pension system to pay public employees their retirements, okay? So these are tax dollars. Was embezzled by Crumball Properties. This is what Herbert's saying. Was embezzled by Crumball Properties. And the way they did it, how they pulled it off, was over the course of years, they just took money out of the account because they could write checks for whatever they would want to with no oversight. Now, I'm not saying we all are geniuses out there, but let me ask you this. It's your money. You're holding on to it. Would you ever allow somebody with no oversight to write checks willy-nilly out of your bank account? Somebody who's not accountable to you? Well, I guess accountable to you, but somebody who's not accountable to where you earn the money from, somebody who's not accountable to the taxpayer, to the voter, somebody who's not accountable is now able to write checks out of a private company is able to write checks out of taxpayer funds with no oversight? And then they're shocked it leads to a $10 million embezzlement? I'm not shocked. I have a little bit of common sense. You have a little bit of common sense. And you would say that, hey, you know what? What we will not do is allow some other random company, some other random person to write checks with no oversight out of my bank account. But of course, this isn't their money. And they treat it like that as they do things like allowing this company to embezzle this money, reportedly embezzle this money. So they go to write the checks. So Crumball Properties had potentially, is what it says, misappropriated or stolen funds over several years. Now this is where the plot thickens, right? Because then Herbert comes in, okay? Stephen Herbert comes in and he says, look, I want all the cash in the Perimeter Parks account to be returned to the agency for oversight. So he's saying to the Perimeter Park West group that is owned by the agency, return your money because you can't be trusted with it because you're a bunch of idiots. Fact check, true. And so what did Perimeter Park West say? No. Go pound sand. So Perimeter Park West, so they request for the money to be returned to the pension, and Perimeter Park West says, nah, we're going to keep $500,000 in our account. $500,000, we're going to keep that in our account and we're not returning it to you. Woo! And then another concern Herbert brought up involves pension funds allegedly being wired out to external depository accounts without proper accountability. This was first expressed by the County Employee Retirement Systems and Investment Committee in September 2021. So the County Employee Retirement Systems are saying, look, money's being wired out of the external depository accounts without anybody keeping track of it. So money's getting sent out of our accounts and nobody's keeping track of it. Once again, accountability issue. And so the County Employee Retirement System Committee requested that Herbert investigate this. And he said, yeah, I'm concerned too. But then he says, this is what Herbert says, is that the KPPA Executive Director, David Egger, sent Herbert an email instructing him not to inform the trustees of his issues without clearing it with Egger first. So they're playing, what are they playing? They're playing cover-ups? Is there more embezzlement going on? Are they running a smoke screen here to keep us locked out so that way the accountability isn't there? So Herbert says, hey, this is a problem. We should investigate what the county employee retirement system is asking us to do it. Egger says no, and then says, actually, we're going to allow Rebecca Atkins, who's been a KPPA's director of operations, but she's been in a part of KPPA for a long time, to conduct an investigation and report back, despite that being under the job roles of Herbert. So, and then the finance cabinet agreed that the wire transfer law did not comply with statutes. So the finance cabinet then agreed that, yes, Herbert's right. So he reduced about the wire transfers, people authorized to send them, and he takes it down from 10 to 2. And following what he was told, and that included himself and his deputy, which then drew reprimand from Atkins too as well. And so you have to ask this question. What's going on here? Is Herbert saying the truth or not? Was he just fired? Because he was fired May 31st. And it says without cause. So they're filing this whistleblower lawsuit. Well, does he have any proof? Well, it turns out, and this is where the plot gets thicker, even thicker. It turns out that not only did he have some thought this was going on, the embezzlement and the wire transfer issues, but apparently, there was an independent audit done back in, according to this article, independent audit done in 2019, internal audit, that also corroborated his concerns. And so the Herbert says that the audit noted that Crumbar Properties has potentially misappropriated or stolen funds over several years, with its ability to just write checks willy-nilly how it wanted to. And so when he brought this to his person he's supposed to take it to, he brought it to the KPPA General Counsel, Victoria Hale, about the missing funds. This is what Herbert says, that she replied that Perimeter Parks West, now former management contractor, Crumbar Properties, had embezzled them. So now the general counsel, according to Herbert, the general counsel for KPPA, the pension system also says that, yes, the funds are. So we got Herbert, internal audit, Victoria, and Crumbar Properties is now fired. All of them saying they've been embezzling. $10 million. Imagine what would happen to you if you stole $10 million. But why is Crumbar Properties not faced repercussions for their illicit and illegal actions? Well, simply put, Crumbar's got a lot of connections with the court system in Franklin County. And he does. According to the owner of Crumbar Properties, KREF reports, he gives quite a bit of money. In fact, over the last few years, $15,000 he's given in just campaign contributions in the Frankfurt area. Not even statewide, that's just the Frankfurt area. On top of whatever other money he's given. And you know what? And that illustrates perfectly what the problems are with our political system. Because for the low cost of tens of thousands of dollars in donations and campaign workarounds and yada, 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 you too could apparently get away with embezzling $10 million from the taxpayer. And then when somebody catches you on it, they get fired. You see, this is why we as citizens, as I was talking about earlier, have got to donate to good candidates. Because if you don't donate, there are other people who are. And these pieces of garbage that want to steal our money are the ones doing it. They're willing to donate, and they're willing to line their pockets with your tax dollars. Because they're not donating, they're investing, they want payoffs, and those politicians, those corrupt individuals, they're going to give it to them. And if you're not willing to do that, they ain't going to come out and support you. You're going to have to go to war with them. You're going to have to go toe-to-toe with them, probably underfunded because you're unwilling to use government that way. But meanwhile, we the citizens, we can't stand up and support the kind of people running for office that we need to. It doesn't take much. A couple thousand of us donating 10, 20 bucks to the right candidates can get the job done and can fund a person to go toe-to-toe with these individuals who are willing to donate thousands of dollars because they're embezzling millions. Millions. Because if you're unwilling to do the work, somebody else is. Somebody else is. In this case, and what we've been seeing, not just in Kentucky, but all across, is this kind of garbage happening constantly. The people who are lining their pockets, who are giving the donations, they are profiting off our tax dollars. They understand the system. They're working it. And when are we going to learn to try to work the system as we can in order not to line our pockets with taxpayer funds, but to get our money back in our pockets so these people can't steal it in the first place? Well, guys, that's what I got time for today. I know that's a crescendo there. That's what I got time for today. I thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. I appreciate everything. And you have one wonderful